Waiting on it to say we're going. There we are. All right, and welcome on in, everybody, to episode 64 of the Garage Beers podcast, brought to you here on the Belly Up Sports Podcast Network. Go find Belly Up Sports and all the other shows that are on the network with us. Joining you, as always, I'm your host, Michael Keefe. Go find me online at Garage Beers. Mike, with me, as always, over on the east side of Cleveland, it's Chad Meyer at Garage Beers. Chad, what's up, Chad?
What's up, guys? I am sitting here watching the aftermath of the Capitals-Rangers game. There was a line brawl at the beginning, so that's always a good start to a hockey game. I'm kind of glued to it right now, but this will be fun.
With your backlighting, you look like you're in the witness protection program. I need a light on your face, bro.
Well, listen, Jay. If I told you where I was, I'd have to kill you. So.
You know what we need for your voice is one of those voice distorters.
Oh, so
so you'd really be in the witness protection program.
Yeah, like I'll just lean back and I'll go like, I'm watching the.
Exactly. That's exactly right.
I'm watching this Rangers game, and there's a line brawl at the beginning.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Well, we'll bring in our special guest here before because we should hit on that Rangers thing real quick. But we're bringing our special guest first from WKYC. You know him from ESPN. You know him from the Browns for a time. Right now, you know him as a bright and smiling face on WKYC right here in Cleveland every day. It's Jay Crawford. Jay, welcome back to the Garage Beers podcast.
Guys, it's great to be with you again.
Yeah. So, Chad, we haven't really talked about this, but the Tom Wilson thing.
Yeah.
A lot of back and forth. And Jay, are you a hockey fan, Jay?
I used to be a huge hockey fan, but I'm following the Wilson thing. What in the world is going on with the NHL? Are you allowed to bring chains and knives to games now? And they're slapping guys on the wrist. Are they trying to get back to the old fashioned hockey days where guys just bloodied each other from start to finish and there's no punishment?
Yeah, I think they're trying to get back to that a little bit, because there was a lot of back and forth about as to whether what place fighting has in the game now. And a lot of the guys, a lot of the players says it'll always be around, and it's going to. I mean,
it will. You can't take it out.
No,
but it seems like
itself.
Now it seems like the league is a lot more tolerant than they were even just a few years ago. And I think that's probably a response to the hardcore hockey fan. Yeah. And many of them were attracted to the game because of the violence. And so when the league in the late 90s and into the 2000s tried to wash that out of the sport, I think they really, they disenfranchised a lot of the true cemented fans of the game. And now I think that what the league office is saying is we might be making a shift back to the good old fashioned bloody knuckle hockey game. And that's fine. But embrace it. If that's what you're about, embrace it.
Right. And going by Wilson's acts the other night,
my God,
only getting a fine for those actions kind of tells you what direction that's going in.
What was it? $5,000? You used to get $5,000 if you looked at someone cross in the NHL, and now it's like, we're going back to these old. Who was the guy? What was his name? Tiger. He was it. I think he played in the '80s. He used to lead the league in penalty minutes every year. His name was Tiger, but I can't think of his last name now. He was a boss. I mean, he couldn't skate. I'm not even sure if he could handle the puck or shoot, but the dude could fight. And there were a lot of guys in the league that way. Their only role in the league was to be a fighter. Yeah. And, then the sport washed those guys out, and maybe we're going back to that again. And I'd peek in a lot more often if that was again part of the sport.
Yeah. I mean, you're looking at these guys who are more of like pests nowadays than like enforcers. But Tom Wilson is kind of he's an old school enforcer stuck in a new school era right now.
You bet. Yeah.
But he's but like you said, they're going back to that era of the bloody metal hockey is it's definitely something that would bring a lot more casual fans as well. So,
well, they may be looking at the popularity of MMA and UFC, and I mean, for better or worse, we seem to have embraced as a society more of this kind of sporting activity. I mean, there for a while, UFC and MMA was teetering on the verge of extinction. There were states that were writing pieces of legislation that would make bouts in their states illegal. But I think it was like a boulder coming down a mountain. You can try to hold it back for a little while, but you're not going to keep it up there. And now I think it's, in full-fledged rolling down the mountain, picking up steam. And maybe the NHL is like, hey, maybe we can partner with that crowd. Maybe we can embrace that more violent side of the sport again, and perhaps bring some old fans back, and maybe even gain some new ones in the process.
Just like sex, violence sells.
Yeah,
Chad, should there have been a suspension? There's a lot of people talking about whether or not they think there should have been a suspension. Should there have been a suspension for Tom Wilson? Because Panarin gets injured in that fight and is lost for the year. There's heavy damage that happened because of that fight.
I wasn't ready to suspend him until I saw him slam Panarin to the ground. An unwritten rule in hockey is you don't mess with the goaltender after the puck is covered. You just don't do it. And that's exactly what the Rangers player did. I don't know how to say his last name, but that's exactly what he did after the puck was covered. He just kept poking at him, and Wilson pulled him off. Was the little jab to his head a little unnecessary? Yeah, but it wasn't excessive. But after the pile on, and then everything was kind of over, Wilson just kind of slams Panarin's head into the ice. I would say that was probably suspension worthy, and not, or at least a little bit more of a fine than $5,000. I know that's the CBA, the maximum fine in their CBA, but
could you imagine? What do you think Tom Wilson does when he gets the notice? When Tom Wilson gets the notice that he's been fined $5,000, do you think he's just like, okay?
He's like,
here you go.
Let me look under my couch cushion. But I think I got that for you.
Yeah. So, anyways, if you're not watching that because you're hanging out here with us, if you're not even a hockey fan, I would suggest you check out the highlights from tonight's Caps Rangers game, because there's a lot of fighting that went down and a lot of craziness because of that whole situation. You don't want to miss it. So we're going to get away from hockey. We got a lot to talk about with Jay, specifically the aftermath of the NFL draft that was right here in Cleveland, how he feels the Browns did, how we'll kind of go through the picks and all that. But before we get to all of that, of course, we've got to start off with our Garage Beers of the Week. Now, Jay, the last time we did this, the video wasn't released, so people couldn't see your fancy beer with your face on it.
Yeah.
But now we've got you on camera here, so we're going to let you lead us off again. It's time for Garage Beers of the Week. Jay, what's your Garage Beer this week?
It's a shame that the folks that were listening couldn't enjoy that beautiful Jay Crawford special beer. This one though, look, I think that this one, no one here has heard of it because it's West Coast only. But this is the wonderful beer that is known as Ginger Ninja. So it's a ginger beer. It is brewed in Corvallis, Oregon.
Whoa.
I first discovered it in San Diego. I was out in San Diego to visit my son, and they had it at a restaurant, and then we noticed it at a couple of other breweries, and it's big there. And you can't get it here. So we actually brought some of it back with us the last time we came from the West Coast, and it's a ginger beer. If you like ginger beer, you'll love it.
Yeah, I love
Sounds
a good
delicious. The Ginger Ninja.
Yeah, right. Well, I mean, hey, next time? That's okay, Jay. Next time we'll have you on. I'm sure there will be like, oh, the brew kettle made a bottle designed out of a mold of my statue, like it was.
And it's a ginger beer.
I still have some of that left. I still have some of the Jay Crawford brew left. So
we got to come try.
It was a pumpkin beer, if I remember correctly, right?
It is a pumpkin spice. I save it for the special occasions. You know what I'm saying?
That's right.
Fair. Hey, we appreciate that we were a special occasion there for a minute.
Absolutely.
All right. Jay's got a hard ginger beer. Chad, what do you got going on over there on the east side?
I'm taking it down to Amish country. Guys, I'm going to Millersburg Brewing Company. and it's the Tangelicious Tangerine Ale. Kind of looks like my face on the front of the can there. And it's a tangerine ale, and it's a tasty beer. I mean, it's a repeater. I had it on a couple of episodes ago, but it's so good, I just had to get it again. All right,
Nice.
It's a very delicious and smooth tangerine ale, and so Millersburg Brewing Company, Tangelicious.
Sounds
How
yummy.
dare you insult? How dare you insult the horse on that can like that by saying it looks like your face?
Oh, come on. Come on.
All right, so we got one from out west in Corvallis. We got one from down in Millersburg at the Millersburg Brewery. That'll bring it around to me, and I'm going to just bring it right here to Cleveland. It's one of my favorite times of the year. One of my favorite beers is out, and I'm going for it. So it's a big one from Great Lakes Brewery. It is the famous Lake Erie Monster IPA. It's an Imperial IPA. It's 9.5%, and it is a fantastic kind of boozy IPA, and I only have one of them.
Ooh.
Thankfully.
You only need one of them.
So I will not be slurring my words by the end of this podcast, but
yeah. Jay, what do you think of I don't know. You know what? Thanks for coming on the show, Jay.
That's why he only has one of them at 9.5%.
Yeah, exactly.
That's all he needs.
Hey, listen, we're a beer podcast here, so there have been times where we have got to the end of the podcast and there have been some issues putting words together. We're not doing that here tonight.
Very good.
All right, so those are our garage beers of the week. You guys get online, tell us what your garage beers of the week are, and give us some suggestions. Get over to our social media at the Garage Beers. Let us know what you're drinking. And if you got any suggestions, anything we haven't had on the show that you're dying for us to try, send it to us. We'll go get it. So to you guys here on the podcast, Jay and Chad, cheers. To you, the listeners, cheers. Now let's get into it. Let's mention real quick. Yes, Joey has not left the podcast. He just couldn't be on with us tonight. So our faithful listeners might be going, "Where's Joe?" He's not here tonight. Had some other obligations, but we miss him, and he'll be back next week. So, anyways, Jay. Let's get into the Browns draft. Well, actually, before we do that, I want to catch up with you a little bit because I can't really find what's going on. But one thing I do know about you, because you talk about it a lot, is your son Corey is a hopeful for the summer games in Japan this summer. And there was a long story of the delays and everything that happened last year. They eventually canceled. That had to have been crushing. But what's going on with him? I know I think the Olympic trials are in June. I think
they are.
So is he prepping for that?
He is. In fact, he had a meet. It was a premier meet at the Olympic Training Center last Saturday, and a lot of Olympic hopefuls in the meet, including a name that you guys might recognize, Marquise Goodwin, who was drafted by the Bills, and then he's with the 49ers now. He was a 2016 Olympian in the long jump. Corey competed against him when he was at the University of Texas and Corey was at Rutgers. So they've competed against each other for the last 6 or 8 years. Corey won the meet with a jump of 26 feet, 6 or 7 inches. I'm not sure. But it was a nice meet because these are all tune-ups to the Olympic trials. Marquise is clearly one of the favorites in the United States to once again represent the country. Corey beat him on his last jump. So the way it works is at the whole field, there were 35 jumpers. Everybody gets 3 jumps. The top 9 go to the finals. You get 3 more. Corey was trailing Marquise by just an inch or 2. But he beat him by about 8 inches on his last jump, which is money in that world because it's kind of like a walk-off. He's down to his last shot. He's in second place. And so he hits a monster jump. And it was a big day for him. In fact, on that day, Corey jumped further than all 3 of the Olympians from 2016. So it looks good. I mean, all of that looks great. But it all comes down to what he does at the trials in June. You've got to win. You've got to be in the top 3 on that day. And if Corey's jump is amongst the top 3 against the top 24 jumpers in the United States, then he'll go to Japan and represent the United States. in what has really been a long and tumultuous journey. But he gave it up when they canceled the Olympics in 2020 because he does not want to train into the 2024 games. He sacrificed a ton after college. He knew he wanted to make a run at it at 2020. They canceled the games and he retired. He said, that's it. He wants to be a coach. And so he was pretty much ready to turn the page. And then shortly after that came word that they were going to try in 2021, and he was still training, but not as heavy. And he said, you know what, I've come this far. I can't turn back. So he's going to make a run at it, and keeping our fingers crossed that health stays on his side, because that's a huge, huge part of it. But if he can remain healthy through the next couple of meets, and then into the Olympic trials in June, then he'll at least have a chance to represent the U.S., which would be excellent.
That'd be awesome. Yeah, I mean, I guess I'm just as important of a note, Jay. I'm curious. Is the boat in the water? Yeah. Do you have the boat in the water?
Yeah. That is just as important. That is
not just as important.
The only thing that we're waiting on is the weather now. I mean, we had that stretch of 80s. We had some 80s in March, and then we had them in April. And so I was, hurry up, let's get this thing in the water. We get it in the water, and I don't think the temperature has risen over. Well, we did have a couple of days where it was in the 70s, but it was gross. It was cloudy and overcast. Nobody wants to go out boating in that. So I'm waiting for that first 80-degree weekend with sunshine so we can get it out and use it.
Let's go.
I know.
Chad. Yeah. Great. Your kid. He's doing fine. How about the boat?
Well, yeah.
Hey, you got to have the priorities in order, Chad.
Exactly. Well, I mean, we did get, your sons out of the way.
We talked about Corey.
That's 1B. Come on.
That is.
Listen, Team USA isn't sponsoring the podcast, so we can't talk about it too much.
Not yet.
Yeah.
Not yet.
Right. My only other question on the Olympics was, have you discussed with the brass at WKYC there, being the representative to go to the Olympics if Corey makes it to cover the Olympics for WKYC?
That certainly has come up. Japan's not allowing fans from any other nation into the games because of COVID. But that is an option. So if Corey makes the team, that certainly is an option, and we'll go. Well, I'm kind of superstitious. I try not to look too far ahead. I definitely don't want to make plans for it. When I was working at ESPN, Corey was favored to win the NCAA championship his junior year, and ESPN was telecasting the event. And the directors and the producers had asked me in advance, do you have any superstitions? And I said, really, the only superstition I have is I don't want to be on camera when Corey is jumping. And I don't want to be on camera if Corey is in the lead and it's the last round. I don't want to be on camera because I wear it on my sleeve, fellas. I mean, it's your kid, right? And I was that way. I was that way as a competitor. I'm very emotional. Nobody ever had to guess. I wonder how Crawford's feeling. So I just said, really out of respect for everyone, I don't want to be caught celebrating if Corey wins. I don't want to be caught in a moment of, oh my God, if he loses. So they respected that. And as it turned out, Corey was in first place for the entire competition, and he was passed on his on a fellow by the name of Jerry Lawson, who ended up also being an Olympian. He was the first athlete since Jesse Owens to win the 100-meter, the 200-meter, and the long jump at an NCAA championship. Just a wildly gifted kid. But his PR was a foot behind Corey's PR. And Corey was in the lead by a foot. And this kid pulls out an absolute jump of a lifetime, which was like 19 inches past his PR. And it was his last jump. And so Corey lost the NCAA championship on that. And I was thankful that I wasn't on camera because I just, it just wasn't a good look. I took it fine. I wasn't, I just didn't want to disrespect Jarian from Arkansas, who was a deserving champion. and I didn't want Corey to watch that back and to feel like he in any way had let me down. Yeah. So I'm glad that ESPN respected my wishes and didn't show that live. So it worked out well.
Although you've got me like, I feel like I need to get into long jump now because of like, I didn't know there were walk-off long jumps.
Yeah.
But like, who doesn't live for the walk-off? I'm in for that.
Yeah, it's pretty exciting. It really is. It's great when you hit one. When someone hits one against you, it's pretty, it's just like giving one up as a pitcher. Right. It's a long walk back to the dugout.
I have a buddy.
All right, well, you'll be able to catch. No, go ahead.
I have a buddy who's a Olympic hammer thrower. It was for a few years. A.G. Kruger, his name, and I'm terrified of him. By the way,
yeah,
he's probably 6'6", 275 pounds.
It's funny you say that because Corey's first year at the Olympic Training Center, he had 3 roommates and they were all throwers. One was a discus, one was a shot put, and these guys were like 6'7", 300, and here's Corey, 6 foot, 180,
Oh my gosh.
Hi guys.
Yeah, it was funny.
Jay, I have a friend who was probably the same size, like 6 as Corey, back at, and obviously, we were hanging out with AG one night, having a couple of adult beverages like you do in college, obviously of age. But I just remember that Jason, his name's Jason, he decided to say the wrong thing to AG one night. And
oh, no.
I'm not kidding, guys. AG grabs Jason by the top of his head, nothing else, top of his head, gripped him and just lifted him up and threw him against the wall. and I went, all right.
Yeah,
all right.
Those guys are different species from a different planet. It's crazy.
And I'm glad I'm friends with that guy.
Yeah, exactly. Keep him on your good side.
Yeah.
I think your head would have been safe, Chad. Anyways, we're going to get off of track and field. But again, if you want to keep track of what Corey's doing, that's happening in June out in Oregon, where I feel like all the track things always happen. So, and I'm sure Jay will be beaming with pride if Corey does happen to make it to the
one way or another.
Even
if he doesn't, beaming with pride. He's just had a 4-time first team NCAA All-American. I've told him whatever he gets out of this from here is icing on the cake. If it happens to be a trip to the Olympics, that's great. But the sport has given him an incredible life, and I couldn't be more proud of him.
Yeah, your son jumps 26 plus feet in the air in one jump.
Yeah,
he's your kid's a kangaroo. You gave birth. You and your wife gave birth to a kangaroo.
It seems like it. So his longest is 27 feet, and I always tell people if you want to try to get your mind around that, that's like jumping from the 9-yard line into the end zone. You're almost jumping for a first down.
Jesus.
Do they serve snacks on that flight?
Yeah.
Goodness. All right. Well, we wish you the best of luck with that, obviously. But
thank you.
Let's get into the big event from this last weekend, and what a weekend it was. Because of everything everybody's gone through this past year. Jay, we caught up with you close to the same time last year, as a lot of this stuff was still pretty new. We didn't know how long it was going to last, but it was kind of one of the very first things. One of the very first big events like that. We were used to watching the drafts online or, virtual drafts and all that. And so to have in Cleveland the event the way they did and they put it on, I thought it was spectacular. I think we here in Cleveland, us native Clevelanders, when we see our city on TV and they make it look really good, it means something to us. I think they made Cleveland look great. So were you able to take part in some of the fun? Were you working down there? What did you have going on during the draft?
I was down there for some of it, and I watched some of it at home on television. And you're absolutely right. They, that's what television does so well is they can capture the moment, particularly from a distance. And the shots that they were giving us of downtown Cleveland and the lights and the fans. First of all, it's impossible for that stage, the way it was lit, to not look magnificent. But guys, there was a stretch of 3 days where Cleveland was front and center on the national stage. And quite frankly, I don't think we could have looked any better. I really don't. I thought, it was just a terrific event. We really played up, I think, the highlights of what our city has to offer. And you're right. I mean, I watched the Kentucky Derby over the weekend, and we haven't seen that number of people together for a sporting event. It used to be the norm, and now, last year we played baseball games in front of cardboard cutouts. So it was nice, and I hope that is kind of the catapult, because obviously there are fans at baseball games, most of them in a limited fashion, but my hope is that this is really a springboard to the return of the normalcy that we all lived our whole lives with, and that we can put this terrible coronavirus in the rearview mirror and resume our lives. Because really, for the most part, those of us that were lucky enough to come through it, we didn't really know what the next day was going to bring. And it was terrifying for a lot of people. And I think as a country, we're ready to shed that coat and to come out of our cabins after a 12, 14 month sequester. And I hope it seems to be happening just in time as the springtime weather is coming. So I'm hoping for a fun and vibrant, exciting summer outdoors with the masses.
Yeah, I'll tell you, it was, we went down, I took my son, who is getting ready to turn 4 this month. So I took my son. It's one of the first big sports. I've taken him to a couple Indians games, but one of the first big sports things. He had the greatest time. He was out down on the field at the stadium. Being around the people was fun. It was just that little fan experience thing that they put on was great. We had a great time down there. It just was very cool to see. Again, it was like a thing that uplifted the spirits. I was down there for a good chunk of it, whether I was there or just downtown. And it was like life almost started to feel normal again.
Yeah.
And
just to see traffic on the streets down there.
Yes.
Yeah.
I go down there every day for work, and it feels like it's been nuclear winter when you drive to work. There was a stretch when I did the show from home for, I guess, about 5 or 6 months. And when I finally went back, driving through the streets of Cleveland was absolutely like I was in a movie. I didn't see other cars. I didn't see people on the streets. It was just bizarre. And, gradually we've increased the traffic, and now it's starting to feel a lot more like normal. But when I was down there Thursday, and you could really start to feel the buzz of the draft coming, there were people everywhere you looked, and there were cars, and there were people waiting at traffic lights to cross. I hadn't seen that in a year. And so, I mean, it was great. It really was. It was great.
But leave it up to Roger Goodell and the NFL to bring some awkwardness to the great moment, though. That chair on the damn stage was the weirdest thing.
I don't know whose idea that was. It had to be Roger's idea, because usually the marketing folks at the NFL are literally the best on the planet. How about him being shielded with 3 Cleveland bodyguards when he was introduced? How can you possibly boo when he's walking onto the stage with Joe Thomas, Bernie Kosar, and Jarvis Landry?
Exactly.
The only one missing was Jim Brown. So he literally had a human shield entourage, and he still got booed.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Well, he didn't have his jar of comfort M&Ms with him at the draft. That's the only thing I was waiting to see if he was going to bring, his M&Ms that he ate like 200 of during the draft last year.
Yeah, that was another bizarre, crazy thing. But
and we won't even talk about who sat in the chair. But anyways, were you able to catch up with any of your former? There were a ton of ESPN colleagues, former colleagues, ton of NFL Network. Were you able to show them around town a little bit, catch up with them a little bit?
Booger McFarland texted me a couple of weeks before the draft, and he said, "Where are we playing golf?" And so I thought about it for a minute, and I said, "I'll get us on at a nice place." So I called, and I said, "How many guys are you going to be with?" He said 3, counting me 3. So I made a foursome at Kirtland, and I thought, it'd be great. And then as the weather got close, I kept seeing that Tuesday might be the pick day. And I had agreed to MC the NFL Legends luncheon for the NFL draft on Tuesday. Nice. So I actually had to cancel. I couldn't enjoy a beautiful day on the golf course. I had a great time at the event. It was fun, and I got to see a lot of people that I know, and that was nice. But I caught up with my buddy Kirk Herbstreit, who I worked with in local TV. at a station in Columbus. That's where Kirk got his start.
Right.
And then obviously we worked together for a number of years at ESPN. We've been longtime friends. So I was able to catch up with Kirk. That was great. I went to an Indians game with my old producer from First Take, my old producer from Sports Center on the road.
Cool.
My old, actually, he wasn't a teammate of mine. He was a competitor of mine in the independent baseball league that I played in Connecticut. Drew Gallagher, he produces College Game Day. So three very close friends of mine. We went to an Indians game, and again, gorgeous weather. It was just absolutely beautiful. We went to that game Tuesday night that they ended up winning handily. It really was a fun time. And I always like catching up with and seeing former colleagues of mine and reminding myself how good it feels to be off that never-ending treadmill. When you're on it, you can't let anybody talk you into the fact that this is sheer madness, because the human spirit is conditioned to block out any negative things that you can't overcome. Things you have to deal with. So if you get sentenced to prison, you can't change that, so you have to accept that. I'm not equating working at ESPN with being in prison. But what I'm saying is, when you're in that merry-go-round Ferris wheel carnival, you don't even know what you don't even realize it. You just focus on your job and your next task. But that treadmill moves at such a crazy rate of speed. And for 16 years, I hosted a 2-hour live program every single day. And I didn't realize the toll that took on my body and my psyche until I jumped off of it. And now when I'm with these guys, I look at them, and I even tell some of them, I'm like, you poor bastards, man. You don't even know. You don't even. Wow, Bieber is getting touched up. What is going on?
Stop it.
I look at them and I'm like, God, guys, one day when you jump off the Ferris wheel, you're going to call me and you're going to say, do you remember those 13 times that you told me that I don't really even know what the cyclone I'm in? They'll get it, because I was told that when I was in the midst of it too, by folks that had worked there and had gotten out and had gotten their lives back. They had tried telling me, hey man, there's a whole world out there that's not sports related that you could be immersed in if you weren't drowning in sports. And you hear it, but you just, you do. The human spirit does what it has to do to get to the next piece on the board, on the game board. You just block it all out and you just get there. And so when I'm with them, although I enjoy their company and I hear their stories of their day-to-day grind, and I'm like, oh my God,
that gives you the willies.
That used to be me. And I probably was telling those stories in front of people that had worked there and had gotten out, and they were probably looking at me the way I'm looking at my buddies now, like, you poor things. I can't tell you. Now, Herbie's different, because Herbie's gig, I'd say Herbie's got the best gig in TV. He's off for 7 months out of the year. He covers one thing, so he immerses himself in college football. But if he doesn't want to pay attention to a Nuggets-Lakers game at 10 o'clock on a Thursday, he doesn't have to. I had to follow that nonsense, because I may walk in the next day and Bayless may be on a tirade about the triple-double that so-and-so scored. So your antenna are always on, and you're watching everything. And it's, I got to tell you, man, it's not prison, but it's like a sentence. It's like you are literally tied to the Sixers Rockets game, because who knows whether or not Skip's going to want to go off on that tomorrow. So
no. Hey, Jay, we totally get it. For 16 years, the prison guard came out and unlocked the cage on your office, the cage door on your office. Got you out of there. No.
Threw me a loaf of bread and a bottle of water.
Loaf of bread.
No,
but
listen,
that's a fact. It's fascinating.
I'm glad I got to do it. It was an incredible 16 years. The things that I was able to do the places I was able to go and the people I was able to meet, it's 5 books. It's 6 books. It's the stories are unbelievable. I hold them all real close. And it was an incredible run, and I loved every minute of it. I truly did. But it's one of those things that there should be term limits on. There should, you should be able to do 4 contracts and no more, because it's for the lifers, the Bermans, the Bob Lees of the world. Like that's the only place those guys ever worked. At least before I got there, I had worked in 4 markets, some big, some small, and I kind of got a taste of TV on the way up. And so I did know that there was a whole nother world out there in broadcast or in TV that wasn't like this nonstop treadmill that goes on a 12 and it never slows down. So I knew that was out there. And I think that allowed me to more easy in my situation to be able to say, you know what, I'm ready to go back to that. I miss that. It was a great life. It's also a very fun job. You get to do a lot of fun things and meet a lot of cool people. But for the people that are lifers that have been there and that's the only job they've ever had, the only place they've ever worked, they think that's all there is. That's it. It's crazy.
Well, it's like I said, it's fascinating in that, when you talk about, I'm a sports broadcaster, I work in broadcasting sports, and then you bring up ESPN, that's the pinnacle. That's you've made it to the top of the sports broadcasting world. You were at the top. And then it just speaks to what people are willing to put themselves through, yourself included. And then you're talking about your buddies that look a little bit worn down, a little bit run ragged, to stay there and to do what you need to do to stay there. And then what it would take mentally to just say, listen, this is great, but I need to not do this anymore. It's a crazy thing.
I know people that came to that realization real early in their time at ESPN. I know people that were there for 1, 3, or maybe a 4-year contract, and they knew at jump, okay, this isn't for me, because it's not for everybody. It really isn't, because like I said, the obligation that you're under is so incredibly intense, and it's just it's a massive Shark Tank. When you have a good job, and I was so blessed, I always did. I mean, I got to launch the first ever live morning sports show on national TV from New York City. So this was a job that a lot of people coveted. And so obviously the whole time I was in it, which was I was 9 years with Cold Pizza, which became First Take. So the whole time I'm sitting on that chair, I got every male in the company wanting to dethrone me. They wanted that gig. They wanted that plum morning show slot in New York City. It looked glamorous. It was just as much work as any other job at the network. But unearned run. Come on, guys. So I mean, it was intense, man. And some people got there and within a cup of coffee recognized what it was, and they were like, okay, I got to call my old news director back in Washington and see if they got a spot for me, because this isn't working. So a lot of people that you see for a minute and then they disappear, oftentimes that's what happened. They realized that that job was going to do one of 2 things. It was either going to kill them early, or it was going to lead them into an existence where there was basically no life. You didn't have a life outside of work, because let's face it, the sports clock is constantly moving. And I was working mornings, so I had to be up at 4 a.m. But the sports world is going on East Coast till 2 a.m. with games on the West Coast. So when in the world are you supposed to sleep? When are you supposed to? It was brutal. I mean, as much as I loved it, there were a lot of things about the job that, looking back on it, I don't know how I pushed them to the back of my mind and just forged on for 16 years without thinking about all those elements.
I can't get out of my head when you're talking about those people that were there just real quickly, like for one contract or whatever. I can't get Clark Griswold at the Grand Canyon in the original Vacation out of my head. Where he just stands there like, back in the car, kids.
Listen, that's exactly what it was for some people. And, they worried about it because they're like, will this be a stain on my career? Will people, will news directors look at me and wonder, why this 3-year blip? But I always used to tell everybody, man, look, there's no dress rehearsal for life. You get one shot at it. And if you know that you're in a situation that isn't good for you, professionally or personally, exit immediately. Like, just figure out the next step after you take that step.
Right.
You'll figure it out. Most of the people there are wildly talented. They're clearly the best in their profession. They've risen to the top. And the beautiful thing about ESPN, and this is what I tell, I can't tell you how many calls I've fielded from on-air personalities at ESPN wanting to pick my brain and talk about the navigation of the career back to the local game, because that's where we all come from, right? And so they want to know, was it seamless for you? Is it more enjoyable? What is your day-to-day like? Was it difficult for you to, did you have a lot of opportunities? So they know in their mind, they see that national landscape is shrinking. Their production costs have skyrocketed with rights fees the way they are. You saw what they paid for the most recent NFL contract. That's gonna lead to the next round of layoffs. And the guys that I spoke to, several guys over the last week, and they were like, look, everybody in that company is living life, looking over their shoulder. They're waiting for the call, and that's no way to, that's a terrible way to have to go through life. So, I've tried to give the best advice that I can. I can only speak of my experience and what it's been like for me. For me, it's been a dream come true. I wanted to come to my hometown, and I was fortunate enough to have several opportunities here that I could choose between. I was also a guy that kind of built a brand while I was there as this Cleveland sports fanatic. So it was much easier for me because everybody here in Cleveland knew that, oh God, that's the Yahoo that loves us so much. He went on TV and wore it on his sleeve every day. So I was very fortunate and my situation too was I'm way closer to the end of my career. My kids are raised. I've been planning for the afterlife for a very long time. And I am, by afterlife, I mean, the post TV game. Not
that's what you meant.
Not the afterlife. But, so in my situation, it was a lot easier for me. It was I didn't feel like I had this. There are some guys that have young kids and have college. They've got one not to be named on-air talent who has 3 younger children said, "I'm in a situation where I'm looking at 12 years of college tuition." Well. That's a couple $1 million,
Yeah.
And so, and man, when I hear those stories and I'm like, oh my God, first of all, thank God my son was a world-class athlete and all of his college fund was able to be preserved. He didn't need it because his college was paid for because of his athletic ability. But his sister went to Columbia and that wasn't cheap. So we had to kind of steal a little bit from Corey's to get Kirsten through. But when I'm hearing these stories, I'm like, oh my God, thank God all that's behind me. I couldn't imagine the professional pressure of having to do that for 3 or 4 kids, and you've got 12 or 16 years of college tuition looking at you down the barrel. That's probably why a lot of people just get up and go to work and they don't think about anything but getting through today, and that's a crazy way to live life, man.
Yeah. Yeah, well, hey, listen, we appreciate you sharing a little bit about that with ESPN. I'm glad you got to meet up with some of your partners, and that's again, that's what I love about the show. Sometimes we just kind of go down these roads we weren't planning on, but that was really, really cool. With all that being said, let's talk about these Brownies for a minute, because as much as Cleveland, I think, crushed the draft and having the draft here and how great it was, and everybody was saying good things and all that. There's a big sentiment around that the Cleveland Browns did the same thing to this draft as far as how they handled their business. So we just kind of want to go through. We haven't recapped the draft on the show. We just want to go through and recap what the Browns did in the draft. And for me, I think the story of the first 2 rounds is all about it should be called the Andrew Berry surprise. And I don't think Andrew Berry surprised anybody what I mean by that is I think what Andrew Berry walked into completely surprised him.
Surprised everybody.
I think he had no idea, especially Greg Newsome. There's no way Andrew Berry thought he was going to be sitting there at 26.
Well, more importantly, he didn't think he would get the linebacker from Notre Dame in the second round. Daniel Jeremiah and I were texting during the draft. And if you watched NFL Network's coverage, which, by the way, was as good a draft coverage as I have ever seen. First of all, Rich Eisen is the absolute most professional. He has every gear. He's funny. He's smart. He's knowledgeable. But more importantly, he knows how to set up his guys. It was like I felt like I was at a college frat party. Those four were laughing all night long while informing us and entertaining us. And that's very difficult to do. But I thought, and Jeremiah, who's a guy who I was around at ESPN when he worked there, when he first got into TV and knew nothing about it. It was fun for me to watch him. I think he's turned into the best draft analyst on TV. But we kept texting back and forth, and we're like, how far is this guy going to go? Jeremiah had him as his 15th best player in the draft. And I jokingly thought to myself, God, wouldn't it be funny if he just fell all the way to late in the second round? Right. And obviously I'm thinking there's a 0% chance that's going to happen. Zero.
Right.
Because from talking to the guys that I spoke to, his name was never lower than third best talent at linebacker. And I knew that we were going to come out of the first two rounds with the linebacker. So I honestly thought that they may take him in the first round. I really did. Right. And when we didn't, I thought, well, you know what? That's okay. We got a great player with a great background from a great school. It's okay. We'll find a linebacker.
Right.
It's not going to be him, but and then when he kept falling and falling, I kept saying, trade up, because that's his thing. That's Andrew Berry's thing. I knew he was going to do it if the right player and the right teams were involved. And as soon as the trade happened, I knew what was going on. And I just thought, oh my God, we're going to get 2 first-round caliber talent in the first 2 rounds. And that's how you maintain a successful organization. You find steals in rounds 3 through 7.
Right.
Particularly 3, 4, and 5. You hit on players there that you weren't expected to hit on. But part of that equation is your first 2 picks have to be home runs. We hit a home run with our first round pick. And in my view, we hit the walk-off with the second round pick. So I just think that, we addressed the 2 areas of need on our team, the two of the biggest areas of need on our team. And then I just thought it was very surgeon-like the way Andrew filled in the other blanks with quality names who we may not have known a lot about, but once we dug into them and we heard more about who they were and what they've done, you're like, yeah, this fits. I don't see any bad characters. I don't see any baggage. I don't see any Johnny Manziels. I don't see anybody we have to hold our breath on. So now we wait. These things take 3 years to flush out. When Mac Wilson was drafted, I was excited. When Taki was drafted, I'm like, who?
Yeah.
And, I thought Mac Wilson was going to be a guy that we could hang our hat on at that position for a long time. I was wrong. And he still may, I'm not saying at this point that the organization has completely flushed their hand or washed their hands of him and flushed him down the toilet. But, when you have a hit within the first 2 years, and he hasn't done that yet.
Yeah.
He hasn't broken through and been that hit that we were hoping that he would be. So if he develops further down the road, that's great. But I think these young kids are going to be super.
So I have a question for you, Jay. Jeremiah Owusu Koromoa. I think I got that right.
JOC.
Nailed it.
JOC. Yeah.
JOK.
JOK. Yeah.
Yeah, JOK. So, a couple days later, it came out that he had an undisclosed medical condition as one of the reasons why he fell a little bit. But it said, but the Browns doctors cleared him. And the other reason that you see was that, because of his size, lot of teams didn't have a plan for him. So, and Brown's doctors cleared him of that medical condition. So was it really the medical condition, or was it like, or was it more of like because of his size and position, or hybrid, I guess, that teams really didn't have a plan for him? Like, because if the Browns doctors cleared him, certainly like other teams,
right,
doctors could have cleared him.
Could have,
right?
But it doesn't always work that way. So a red flag can be put up by an organization, and it's such an incestuous business. If Baltimore looks at this kid and there's a problem, within a matter of hours, the other 31 teams are going to know about that. And now you do your due diligence on a player. You investigate the player's background. You look into his upbringing, where he comes from, what he likes to do. They dig deep into who these guys are, because you don't want to make mistakes, because these are $1 million mistakes when you make them. Yeah. So a team can put a red flag up on a guy, and oftentimes that's going to scare a good number of other teams. Well, if there's something there, if Baltimore saw something, there must be something there. And so teams will take them off their draft board. They don't want risks. The way you succeed in the NFL draft is to eliminate as much risk as you can. Yes. Inherently, there's going to be risk. It's a lottery. You don't know how anybody's going to turn out.
Right.
But the thing of it is, I mean, look back. I always tell people this. You guys are probably too young to remember this. Once upon a time, the big draft dilemma was Peyton Manning or Ryan Leaf. Right. That was the big draft dilemma. And one of them was losing his mind on a national stage in real time in front of us, while the other one has gone on to be $1 billion empire of pitchman / Hall of Fame quarterback skill. Right. If this were a science, that wouldn't have been the big question of the draft season.
Right.
So it's not a science. It's not. So some teams will hear some of this chatter, and they'll further look into it. Other teams will hear it and they'll say, take them off the board.
Jeez.
And now, remember this, guys, remember this. The game of the NFL draft is trying to sort out fact from fiction. What's real and what's fake news? There's no more fake news than there is in the NFL draft. Much of it started by GMs and scouts. They'll tell a reporter, we looked into it, or this player did horribly on this, or he had some real red flags that we found, hoping perhaps that his draft stock plummets and they can get him at 26.
Right.
So it's all this weird game of espionage in this very closed quarter incestuous bubble of 32. And so what leads to a player plummeting? Who knows? Justin Fields is an example. I saw a story that was leaked. I shouldn't say leaked. I saw a story that hit the wires after the draft that said Justin Fields scored higher on an athlete psychological IQ evaluation test than any other athlete that's ever taken the test, and it's been administered to 65,000 athletes. Okay, so
what?
If that's true, okay, somebody knew about it before the draft, the Bears, and they kept it under wraps. That wouldn't be anything that they would want to share, because then that player might be gone before their name was called. I've also heard teams put out information about a player that is not true, as I said before in the other scenario, in hopes that teams would gobble up this information and look at it as gospel, and they would avoid him. I don't know what happened in the case of JOK. I really don't. I don't know whether I don't know what happened. I know this.
Yeah.
Everybody was buying into the notion that he's not as good as his tape. Right? I mean, his tape speaks for itself. But everybody was buying into the notion that he's not really that good. So he slipped. He's into day 2. The Browns are sitting there. They're biting their nails. How many more picks do we have to hold our breath on? And they finally got to the point where the risk was outweighed by the potential reward of what this guy could become. And it's funny. I love looking back on 1985 pre-draft columns. What were people saying about the players that were going to come out?
Right, sure.
It's filled with misses, and it's filled with opinion that this guy's going to be terrible and the guy's in the Hall of Fame, or this guy is a can't miss, surefire gold jacket Hall of Famer one day, and the guy has, a one contract career and he's done. And so you just can't figure it out. I by all accounts, Andrew Berry is a wizard. I mean, every movie he's made so far has been like Jedi. You were looking at this guy going, what? And because we're not used to that. We're used to us making exactly the wrong move. And I'm not saying Andrew's not going to have misses. He will. He absolutely will. But the way you secure a long career as a GM in the NFL is to have more hits than misses. And so far, he's got a nice little drawer of equity built up to where when his misses finally hit, they're not going to be career-ending.
And Jay, as Browns fans, how many times have we done it over the years? How many times have we been watching the draft, trying to do our own thing, and you watch that one player where you're like, that guy is going to be awesome. He's going to be awesome. He's going to be awesome. And for some reason, he's slipping, and all of a sudden, Pittsburgh's on the clock. And you're like, Jesus Christ.
Every time.
Baltimore's on the clock.
And it's usually
like, what in the hell?
Baltimore. Yeah, I know.
And they always take them.
Yep, they do.
This is what they must feel like. Other teams must have been out there looking at, other fans must have been out there looking at JOK being like, what's happening? What's happening? And then he lands at the Browns. For good reason, we jumped to JOK because that was, pardon my French, but that was the holy shit moment of the draft.
No doubt.
That he fell, the Browns trade up, they get him. But I think in Andrew Berry's head, that moment is in the first round. I think many, many people had those four cornerbacks going in the top 15, top 18.
Yeah.
Greg Newsome, Patrick Surtain, J.C. Horn, and Caleb Farley. So for Greg Newsome to fall to 26, crazy.
I think you're right. And this is what I love about Andrew Berry. And every GM does this. They have alternative plans. What if a tight end is off the board at 4? Are we going to see a run at tight ends then? What if a running back goes at 11? What's going to happen? How will that lead to dominoes falling in ways we didn't predict? And what I loved about the way the first round unfolded for us, we haven't been in this position in forever. We're always able to dictate, well, we're third, so if this guy's gone, we want this guy, and if they're both gone, we get this guy, and we win, right? I mean, that's the way it goes.
Boom.
But when you're 26, there are now 25 different scenarios you have to prepare for, right?
Right.
What if this guy goes and this guy? So if you're rating players and you're of the mindset that, and the Browns aren't because they don't need to be now, but if you're of the mindset that you're taking best available, because that's what the Browns used to do because we needed everything. Now we're going in, and I always say, you're not going grocery shopping. That's what we did for 20 years. Our cupboards are bare. We're going to the grocery store and I'm grabbing everything. I'm starved and everything looks delicious. So now, you know what we're doing? We're doing that midweek quick trip to the market. We know what we need. We need fruit or we need milk. And so we walk right by all of those other aisles and we go right to what we need. And that's how you get fat in the NFL. And so, and we knew what our needs were and we addressed all of them and we addressed them with quality players. And the beauty of what happened is in my view, we got a front of the first round talent in the back end of the first round, late in the back end, and we got a first round talent in the second round. So that's an A+. That's a win-win.
That's the definition. That's the definition. Again, I don't know that Newsome was like the flashiest of the cornerbacks out there that came out, but I'd like to remind everybody that last year, all season long, he gave up less than 100 yards to the receivers he was covering total.
Yeah.
All year,
I mean,
less than 100 yards.
He didn't play much, right? I mean, he missed a lot of time, I thought. He didn't. How many games did he play last year?
He did miss some time. I think he played a majority of the year, though.
So my concern with him is durability. And okay, so
which last year was a majority of the year.
Yeah, I mean, I think Ohio State played 8, maybe, or was that counting the Big Ten championship game? I'm not sure. Here's what scares me. We drafted a player that does have durability issues. He has had some soft tissue injuries through his career that have forced him to miss time. We drafted a player with durability issues at a position where we have big durability issues in Greedy Williams. And so Greedy, when you stand next to him and he's not in a football uniform, you're looking at him like, dude, what are you doing here? There's no way you're like, I mean, I'm sure he would tell you the same thing. It's just, he's just,
what high school do you go to?
Super tiny. Yeah. It's like, it's amazing. It really is. And and then Denzel has missed parts of all of his pro seasons with injuries.
Right.
So for me, I think the one thing that will keep Andrew Berry up at night are the concerns over the health of that position group.
Yep.
Can Ward stay on the field? Can Greedy stay on the field? And now you go and you draft Newsome, who's got he has some durability issues, and that's probably why he slipped to the place that he did. But at this point, you're hoping that between the three of them, 2 of them can be available most of the time. And even if you have to mix and match to get 2 good, if you get 2 of those guys on the field for 16 games, you're way ahead of the game. So that's the goal at this point. And you can't predict injuries. The only thing you can do is take the information that you have on a player prior to that, you drafting him, and trying to fold that into your decision-making process. And I'm sure there were discussions in the Browns draft room about that. And in the weeks leading up to the draft, we like this kid a lot. He's a great player. I love his confidence. I mean, to me, if you don't have a corner that thinks he's the best player in the league, you probably have an issue at that position. It's the same at wide receiver too. Those guys will come back to the huddle and tell the quarterback they're open on every play. And they think they are. And corners believe that they can cover anybody in any situation. I haven't seen Bieber get hit like this in.
Can he stop it?
Maybe.
Can he please stop it?
It's a wrap now. It's 4-0. He just gave up a 2-run double, and
it's not a wrap.
They're squaring up balls, and they're good news. This just in from the NBA. The Cavaliers lost to the Trailblazers tonight, 141-105. Can the Browns
get that draft pick, baby?
Quick? Can the Browns play like right now?
Get that draft pick.
Yeah, please.
Okay, so I do want to.
Hey, you want to hear a wild stat? This is way off topic. You want to hear a wild stat?
Wild status.
There are 2 different regimes in the current Cavaliers ownership tenure. Okay, so follow me. Dan Gilbert bought the team in March of 2005. So from 2006 to now, there were 9 seasons where he had LeBron James, and this will be the 7th complete season where he did not. Their winning percentage in the 9 years with LeBron James, 655.
Oh, God.
Their winning percentage in the 7 years without LeBron James, 292. And here's what's worse.
Is that bad?
That's bad. Here's what's worse about that.
Oh.
We have held the Browns up as this beacon of awfulness in professional sports over the last 2 decades. Going back to that same time when Gilbert bought the team in 2006, the Browns' winning percentage is 319. It's actually better than the Cavs in the years where LeBron James wasn't on the roster. And With tonight's loss, the Cavs seem to be fixating on finishing 15th and dead last in the East. If they finish 15th in the East, here would be the places that the Cavs finished in the East in the non-LeBron years under Dan Gilbert's ownership. 3 15s, 2 14s, a 13, and a 10. No playoff appearances.
10 gives us hope, baby. The 10 gives us hope.
Well, the 10 was when Kyrie was like kind of becoming a star. It was the last year before LeBron came back.
Yeah.
So I know that Gilbert brought Cleveland an NBA title, and we tend to think of him as, oh my God, thank you. He's been a dumpster fire of an owner.
Well, I think there's so much. And again, I don't know that we have the time. I don't know that I have the energy for the Cavaliers right now.
However, I don't either. I should have never brought it up.
And here comes the number 5 pick in the lottery, despite those stats.
Oh, well, that's the other thing. We'll probably wind up with the worst record and get the 8th pick in the draft or something like that.
And draft a guy that no one's ever heard of.
You know, I think a real discussion, as sad as this makes me because I want to like him, I think a real discussion needs to start happening about Kobe Altman because he's not been great. His drafts have been okay, but his moves have not been good. His trades have not been good.
You're being nice.
Yeah.
You're being nice. And I like Kobe. I root for him. I want him to do well, but holy cow. I mean, the proof is in the numbers.
We got a comment that the 8th pick got us a stud last time, referring to Colin Sexton.
Oh,
I don't know that I'm going to call Colin a stud at this point.
Well, listen, he needs to be coached. He I think he's a great talent, but you got 4 other guys on the floor with you. Use them. Mm-hmm. And it's just it's like
somebody's leaking to the media that the players are complaining about how much he handles the ball and all that. So,
well,
anyways, it's not been a good end of the year for the Cavaliers. It's not been. There's been some promising things that have happened. Darius Garland has played well. Colin Sexton looks like he can be a star. Isaac Okoro is coming around this back half of the year, which is awesome.
From him that excites me.
Yes, so we'll see what happens. But good grief, that season's almost over, which is fine. Real quickly, back to the Browns.
Okay,
a couple picks that I just wanted to hit on. The round 3 pick. And I think Browns fans are so conditioned. I think Browns fans are so conditioned with wide receivers in the draft that they need like their next stud wide receiver. That I think a lot of Browns fans were like, Anthony Schwartz. Why are you taking Anthony Schwartz? Because he's not a polished wideout, but he runs 4.2 speed. The guy's a track athlete.
Yeah.
But when you factor in, like in my head, and you tell me what you think, Jay. In my head, Anthony Schwartz, I think they envision him as like the Mecole Hardman of the Chiefs. He's not one of your main wide receivers, but you can swing it to him out of the backfield. You can hide him and run like screens out to him, and he can break a defense at any point in time.
Well, I'm glad you brought up the Chiefs and made that comparison, and here's why. In the 2020 version of the NFL, we are finding more and more that teams are getting creative in ways to get the ball into their playmakers' hands, right? And Hardman's a great example of that. Like when a guy has that kind of ability, just put the ball in his hands and he's going to make something happen. And I think Schwartz is the exact same guy because, and here's the other thing that he could be valuable with. He's going to take the top off the defense. Even if you send him on a go route, someone's got to follow him. And that someone is going to create an opening either on a crossing route over the middle, or there's going to be a pocket in the defense that Landry or Beckham can slide into because you've got Schwartz commanding attention on deep routes. And if you don't pay him attention, he's going to get behind the defense and Baker is going to find him because he's proven that he can do that with the deep ball. So I think we went to the grocery store with a very defined shopping list of what we needed. And we walked out.
We weren't hungry when we were shopping.
And we went through this 9 items or less line. And we had a smile on our face the whole time because nobody was in line in front of us. And we just went through the cash register. Bloop, bloop, bloop. We gave them our card. We walked out. And when we were walking out of the grocery store, we were looking over our shoulder like, did I steal something?
Right.
I paid for everything, right?
Yeah.
Why do I feel like I just committed larceny? Because we got what we needed. And I think we checked every box of what we needed. And I don't think I couldn't have written a better draft before the draft. I couldn't have done it. I mean, everybody knew what we needed, but it seems like we came out of there with the best available player at all of those positions when we were drafting. And that never happens to the Browns. And by the way, you mentioned earlier that it's the Ravens that swoop in and make a trade in the spot before us to take the guy that we've been targeting the whole time. What you left out of that scenario was the guy that was orchestrating those moves was once upon a time Mr. Cleveland Brown, Ozzie Newsome.
Right.
So that was more salt in the wound.
Yeah, here you go.
And it was just, and Ohio State's game of pain Pittsburgh's game of pain is taking Ohio State athletes that we think are garbage that go on to have great careers in Pittsburgh.
Exactly.
Because for whatever reason, the Browns have been adverse to drafting Buckeyes. It's happened a handful of times in the history of the organization, almost to bemusement. You're like, wait a minute, this is a blue chip program. It has always been a blue chip program that throws players into the NFL that become stars. And for some reason,
they're always good.
The team closest to them geographically just looks the other way and watches Pittsburgh take them. And it's always been a source of my absolute madness. How does this happen? How is this a thing every stinking year?
Yeah.
And hopefully this regime kind of realizes the mistakes of the past regimes. And we got a Buckeye, and hopefully he has a nice career. But it'd be nice if when these can't miss All-American Buckeyes are available when we're drafting, and we need players at that position, that we might take a few of them.
Yeah, I think
seems obvious.
That was my next question. I mean, I think I know the answer to this already, there, Jay. But we talked about Schwartz, but who is your favorite pick of this Browns draft, not named Greg Newsome or JOK?
Well, I loved Schwartz, to be perfectly honest with you. So when the day before, I was going through a buddy of mine who studies the draft for a living, but doesn't work for a network, but provides scouting reports to the networks, does a lot of work with the teams. I had asked him for his top 10 at linebacker, safety, defensive end, and wide receiver.
Nice.
And Schwartz was like number 7, and he had an asterisk next to it, but there was no asterisk below the list. And I'm like, I think he left something off. He wants to say something about this guy, but forgot. So I called him and I said, hey, listen, this burner, Schwartz, you have him at 7 and there's an asterisk next to his name, but you don't have there's no denotation key below it. Like, I don't know what that meant. And he goes, oh my God. Yeah, I forgot. Because he prepared this list specifically for me, because I had asked him about those positions in particular. And so some of it was cut and paste, and he put it all together, and he just forgot to fill in the asterisk. And I said, so what did you want to say there? And he said, well, what I want to say about him, what I meant to tell you about him is he's the guy that most perfectly fits the wide receiver that you guys are looking for.
Yes.
So there's different kinds of wide receivers. There's the Plexico Burress, big body wide receiver that go up and get anything. Then there's the route runner that's, like Wes Welker is not going to jump off anybody's charts. But like when you watch him long enough, you're like, you know what? This guy's really, really solid as a route runner. And then there's, Brian Brennan types, the hands guys that you 3rd and 7 and you need a first down. You're going to look to him. Well, so what he said about Schwartz was he's the guy, if I have to look at all the wide receivers that are available, he's the guy that I think would fit most perfectly into what Cleveland needs. We got him.
Yeah.
That's what you want to do. So probably my favorite pick because it worked out that way, and because I got this scouting report, I'm like, well,
that's awesome.
when you get your guy, so guys, that's almost like you could almost make an argument that he's a first-round pick, because if he was the best fit for us at wide receiver, and that's who we got, and we got him in the third round, you just tip your cap to Andrew Berry, and you realize that this guy's making all the right moves. He's a Jedi. That's what he is.
Well, you made the point. You made the point of what he can do for the other receivers, taking the top off and all that. But you also got to make the point of what the other receivers do for him. When you got Odell Beckham out there, and you got Jarvis Landry, and you got Hollywood, and you got this receiving, and not to mention Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt and Austin Hooper and the group. Right.
Yeah.
What that does for a guy that you can just get a little swing pass out to, the space that creates, because that's what this guy is. This is not your precise route runner guy. This is your get him a little swing pass.
Yep.
Get him out in space.
World-class sprinter that you have to put. That my game plan for if I'm on offense and I'm drawing up a game plan, I'm not ready to close my eyes on Saturday night unless I have 5 specific plays called for him.
Right.
And once I have a play a quarter and one extra one that's worked into my game plan for my burner, for my playmaker, for the fastest guy and maybe in the league, guys. Then I'm good. Then I can say, okay, I'm good.
Right.
I can go to bed tonight, and because if one of those 5 turns into a touchdown, you're going into the game with a 7-point lead every time.
Right. Exactly.
So I love it. I love what he can do, and I think the battles in camp are going to be ferocious in years past. Right? Because in years past, we were like, well, God, I don't know if we got 5 guys that can make the team at wide receiver.
Yeah, right.
Now,
which one of these guys do we have to keep?
Now you're saying, which one of these guys that will be picked up within 15 minutes of hitting the waiver wire are we going to have to ask for his playbook?
Right.
And we haven't been in that situation, guys, since the 80s.
We went to the grocery store.
I feel bad for whoever that is, but that's amazing.
We went to the grocery store for fruit. We got to the car, realized we needed bread and milk, went back in and got it, man.
And got free dessert.
Yeah, I got free dessert.
Yes.
Yeah.
Nothing better than free dessert.
Real quick, between Anthony Schwartz and the next guy I was going to talk about, you did have James Hudson. That to me is the sign of here's where we're at as a franchise pick. You take this tackle who's a monster.
Yeah.
He's a monster. He's raw and he needs work, but you're going to now put him in as depth behind the best offensive line in football, where he's going to be able to learn from that entire group. And who knows if 3-4 years down the road, James Hudson isn't your starting tackle. So we'll see what happens with him. But then we went in last week and I asked the guys on the podcast last week, I said, who's the one guy outside of like the first round that you desperately want to wind up with the Cleveland Browns when this weekend is all said and done? And we went around the horn, and my answer was Tommy Togiai from the Ohio State Buckeyes.
Nice.
I think it's absurd. I think it's absurd that he went in the 4th round. I think it's obviously there's some size questions with Togiai, and that I think was the primary issue with him.
It was the issue.
But having said that, you talked about a blue chip university football program in Ohio State. Did you ever see somebody, well, with this group specifically, I shouldn't say have you ever seen somebody, because of course you have, but somebody that, remember, Togiai was out for a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
The impact that he had when he came back, when he was off the field versus when he was on the field, changed the entire Ohio State defense. Completely changed it.
And we know that because we watched every snap of the season. And you start to learn like little nuance, like things that you can't measure. There's no plus minus stat in football, really. It's your
Right,
eyes.
right.
It's your eyes. Like, you know that defensive linemen are rotating in and out, and you kind of get a feel by the middle of the second quarter who's on the field when the plays are being made and who isn't, right?
Exactly.
And with the Ohio State defense, it was like you were seeing a completely different unit when he was in the game. And
Yes.
that only happens in hockey. Like when your leading scorer is
Right.
anchoring the first line, suddenly everybody on the first line looks freaking amazing. Well, that's the impact that one player can have. Well, it's weird too, because at that position, you can make everybody look better. When you're getting to the quarterback a second earlier,
Right.
you're making your defensive backs automatically look so much better because they're never getting burned. They're not getting burned on deep routes because the quarterback doesn't have time to step back and find a guy and throw to him. So there are players at every position that have an intangible impact on a team. And I think I'm not saying he's going to have that impact at the next level. He clearly had that kind of impact at Ohio State. So, and here's another thing. We've been pointing out the differences between these Browns and our old Browns, right? And among them is when we used to draft in the 6th and 7th round, these guys were going to make the team.
Yeah. Yeah.
They were going to make
That's
the team.
very true.
Right.
Now,
No, and we needed them.
Wow.
We needed them.
we absolutely needed them. Now, what we're
This
seeing
guy better be
is
good.
we're drafting guys that are potential projects. So what that means is you can draft a raw guy. Like I think Schwartz is kind of a raw wide receiver.
Yes.
You know, I
Yes.
think if you took away his 4.2 speed and you gave him 4.5 speed, he's probably not being drafted. He's probably not playing college football.
And part
But
of
he
that's
has-
Auburn's fault too. And part of that's Auburn's fault because of the
I
Auburn
agree with
system.
no, I agree with you. I agree with you. But so suddenly we're taking guys that maybe are super green or they're raw, but they're dripping with natural ability. We couldn't do that before. We had to
and you're
take
not relying
football
on them.
players before. Right. If you get something from your 5th round pick in this draft, that's a bonus. Because when you look at the
Right.
roster that we have and you start making roster decisions, now I know that things are going to happen in camp and injuries and whatnot, but if you looked at our roster before we went into the draft, you're like, we don't have 9 spots available.
Right.
Yet we go
Right.
in with all this draft equity. We have 9 picks, right? So that allows you to take a chance here or there on a guy that might be a little green in the experience department, or maybe hasn't had the proper coaching, or maybe he comes from, a smaller, unproven school. And what can he do when we get our hands on him? And that's where the Patriots have always thrived. They're able to take those guys that other teams aren't even paying attention to because they need guys that are going to stick on their roster. The Patriots are taking these guys saying, you know what? If Wes Welker turns into what we think he can be, he's going to help our team. And how many of those guys have the Patriots drafted during Belichick's 20 years there? Endless. Endless. So it's one thing to reach for a need and to take that player that everybody thinks is going to be an absolute superstar. And then it's another thing to take a guy that you see some quality in, whether it's work ethic or it's his he's just a winner, or he's a born leader, or he's got this quality or that quality. And oftentimes these things are immeasurable. You can't see them in Indianapolis, and they're intangible. You can't even sometimes you can't even explain it in a guy. I've had coaches tell me when you say, well, what is it that you love so much about this player? And the answer sometimes is, and it's the same answer, I don't even know. I can't put my finger on it.
Just something about him. Yeah.
The answer is this.
I don't know.
Everything. It's everything. If I could have 22 of him, I'd win the silver trophy every year. So,
Yeah.
and that's gut, right? That's purely gut. That's Indians are on the board. I just saw a stat on the Indians broadcast. I think it said I'm trying to do both at once. I think it said they lead the major leagues in run differential after the 6th inning, which makes sense because their relievers this year have been really, really good.
Right.
And I have noticed the last
My boy
couple
Emmanuel
of weeks,
Clase.
Oh, my God. The thing is with him, though, I want a little movement to his fastball because 101 is impressive, but when it's rail straight, these guys are going to get it. And a lot of his fastballs, there was a outing he had against the Reds a couple of weeks ago. Came in, like, lit the gun up, boom, boom, boom. And he didn't have a swing and a miss in the inning. And he lost the game because they had Naylor playing first base, and he let a ball go through his legs. And then 3 hits after that. But it was exactly, when it happened, I go, that looked exactly like Bill Buckner. And then we end up losing the game. But I'm screaming at Clase, you have other pitches.
Not quite the same implications.
Try to fool them here and there. And by the way, when you throw 101, can you maybe cut it a little bit? Make it come in. Like 101 is great, but these guys are going to hit it. The next night he came on against the Reds. He got out of it. It was a little shaky. He got out of it, but he started throwing the slider. And guys were off balance, and that's how you win. A 101's great, but you better have something in your arsenal that's 90.
Yeah.
Here it comes, Parkman, the Terminator.
It's 4-2 in the 6th inning, and Franmil Reyes is at the dish.
Yeah.
I love Franmil Reyes.
He's a swing away from tying this puppy.
We did get a fan question from one of our buddies, Derek, who's listening. He wanted to know, in your opinion, of the guys the Browns drafted, who has the highest floor and maybe the lowest ceiling?
Oh, God, the highest floor. Don't you want to say the highest ceiling?
Well, I think what he's saying is the highest floor and the lowest ceiling. Like, that's the one player with the highest floor and the lowest ceiling. So a guy that is...
Oh, the one player...
He's not going to bust out.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So I guess another way of saying it is the guy that could be a superstar, but either way, he's going to be a good player.
Yeah, for real.
Well, typically you would want that person to be the first player you selected.
Fair.
Because, I mean, if he doesn't have the highest ceiling, I don't know why you're drafting him there. I know a lot of it's done on perspective. You're prospecting on a player. Is this player going to live up to his potential? Did the players that he played against at his position in college, do those players, are they of the caliber that will go to the NFL? That's why I'm always leery of taking a North Dakota State quarterback. I'm always leery of that. Always.
Right.
And the reason I'm leery of that, I'd rather take the second or third best quarterback in the SEC who faced NFL caliber competition throughout his career.
Yes.
When you're at North Dakota State, I don't even know who the Bisons or whoever they are, I don't even know who they play. Like, how can I judge a player? How can I make an educated opinion on a player if I don't know anything about the players he's playing against? When I take a player from a blue chip program, from a Notre Dame, an Ohio State, a Clemson, I know that those guys have done it at that level against the highest talent available for that sport in that category. So I don't want to take a guy from North Dakota State. I think it's too risky. Now, when you play corner, I will say this is a concern of mine that I haven't brought up. The Big Ten, I thought this year the Big Ten was extremely bad. I thought they were extremely bad. I mean, at one point, I think we had Michigan State, and Penn State, and maybe they had one win, and we were like in week 4.
Yes.
Now, I know that the whole year was just, you could just throw the whole year out, really, with COVID and everything else. But this wasn't a year where I think anybody that has observed the Big Ten historically, where you would say, wow, this talent, this conference is dripping in talent. So that's a bit of a concern for me, to be quite honest with you, because, wow, we got a real argument going on in the Royals game, Indians game right now.
Oh,
did you see that? I don't mean to cut off. But that thing last night, did you see that thing last night? What the hell was that?
Right now, and Angel's in the middle of this one too. He's not a good umpire. I think he's the worst umpire in Major League Baseball, and you won't find many fans that disagree with that.
Well, then I'm not surprised that there's an argument going on.
Now Matheny just got tossed.
Oh, bye.
Matheny is as animated as I've ever seen him. He's
That
typically,
must be good for us, though.
It is good for us
Something good
because
happened in our
okay, so
favor.
what I caught was there was a pickoff attempt at second base. The Indians had runners at first and second. Singer whirled to throw to second. Runner was safe. Wasn't even a close play. But the umpires called a balk. So the Indians runners go from first to second. Now, by first and second to second and third. And that's not reviewable unless they change that rule and I didn't know about it.
Right.
So a balk is not reviewable. Now, I'm looking at it right now. His foot is on the back of the – oh, wow, that's a great call. He buckled his left leg, his front leg. He's a righty.
The balk call. I love the balk call.
Listen, I pitched Saturday in our season opener.
Yeah.
I gave up one unearned run in 5 innings.
Yes. Jay.
Against the team that beat us in the championship last year by 1 run.
Took him down.
So we won the game, so it's all good.
Let's go.
The run I gave up was I come set. There were runners at first and third. And just as I'm getting ready to make my move to the plate, the third base coach yells back. Now, I had held it I was changing my cadence. I was holding it for a little bit longer than I normally do. And the third base coach yelled back. And I thought it was my third baseman yelling at me to step off. And I flinched, and I'm telling you, it was so minor. And the umpires didn't call it, but the third base coach and the manager from the other team both jumped up and yelled balk. And that led the umpire to throw his hands up, yell balk, and tell the runner at third to come home. And I think it's my first balk in over 20 years. Oh, man. Carlos Santana just made an unbelievable play at first base that kept this game from being tied. We got a run. It's 4-3.
I don't think I've ever seen anybody hit more hard hit balls that wind up as outs as Josh Naylor. I love him.
He does it all the time.
He smokes the ball.
He just did.
Right at people.
So are you watching it? What a play.
I have it now, yeah.
What a play. That, he made a play earlier this year that saved the game for the Royals. I think it was opening day. Opening day, he made a play at first base that kept us from winning the game. He's so good at first. Singer's coming out,
the pitcher
and
for the Royals. He's screaming.
He is giving it to Angel.
All right, Jay.
Wow.
So overall, because we'll let you out of here. We'll let you go enjoy the rest of your night before you got to get to bed. Overall, though, I mean, is it safe to assume do the Browns get an A for their draft this year?
Solid A, not an A+, not an A-, solid A. And the beauty of these things is that all of this is just hot air. And we can look back in 3 years and we can say that whether or not this draft was a hit or a miss. Was it getting Denzel Ward and Baker Mayfield in the first round? No draft can ever live up to that ever again because what were they, 1-4?
Right.
So
let's not do that again.
We'll never. Yeah, I hope we don't.
Right.
We'll never be able to do that again. But for where we were late in the draft and for what we got, I feel we did better than 28 teams if they had been in the same situation.
Yes.
That's how good I feel about it. So
love it.
We'll see. In 3 years from now, you'll have me back on. I'll bring out another beer. We'll talk about, remember that draft class of 2021 that we thought was so good? Well, we were either right
we
or
better
we were
be
wrong.
Right. Or wrong.
I hope we're right. but one day we'll know. And it's just going to take us a long time to figure it out.
It better be.
Go ahead,
Chad. No, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, can we quickly go through the rest of the division? I mean, because like the Bengals blew my mind. I mean, I get it. Like,
yeah, they whiffed hard.
I get it pairing Burrow with his number one receiver at LSU, but why?
Yeah.
But did they forget that he tore an ACL last year?
That's something we would have. That's something we would have done. I know, and that's something we would have done in the past. We would have. We couldn't take our eyes off the shiny object. Whether it was Johnny Manziel or Brady Quinn, we couldn't blink. We were starstruck by that shiny object. So I think what the Bengals did is, look, they got a great player. Player. But here's my analogy there. You got a beautiful Ferrari. It's got a nice brand new coat of orange paint with black stripes down the middle of it. Now you go to pop the hood and you look and you're like, what the hell happened to the engine? That looks like a Volkswagen. That looks like a 1969 Volkswagen engine. What are we doing?
Yeah.
The engine to any offense is the offensive line. Everybody wants to think it's the quarterback and the wide receiver. You can have the best quarterback in the league. If you don't have people to block up front, he's going to be hurt by week 3, and now you're onto your backup, and you still got a sucky line. So you got to pay attention to that line. And the fact that they missed on that was stunning to me. Absolutely stunning.
Right. Well, especially the guy on the board when they were picking.
He was there.
Consensus.
Consensus number one.
One of the best offensive linemen, presumably. We'll see how it plays out in 3 years, but leading into the draft, one of the most talked about best offensive linemen in years.
Yep.
And they didn't take him.
They did not take him, and they're going to regret that. And you can almost look at the Steelers and say the same thing. So the Steelers thought they needed a running back because Connor suddenly forgot how to be a running back. Just like that. He just forgot how to be a running back. So and look, they got a great player too. This kid's a great player. One of the more talented offensive players in this draft. Sure. But they went to the grocery store and they were starved. And they bought the bag of Doritos instead of the rump roast. That's just a bad move. Right. Doritos are sexy, man. Doritos are sexy. And they'll scratch that itch when you're hungry, but when you're done eating them, you're like, what the hell did I just do? And now, so you know what they're going to say next year? At the end of next year, when the Steelers are 24th in the league in rushing yards, and Ben has been sacked 1 billion times and he's thrown 11 interceptions a game, they're going to say, I knew they should have drafted a lineman. And yet all Steelers fans I know think that they won the draft. They won the draft. Yeah, because Connor sucked and we needed a new running back and now we got our guy and now we're going to be the Steelers again. You were the Steelers because you always paid attention to your lines, both offensive and defensive.
Yes.
And as your line got old, you got drunk on the sexiness of skills players. And now you got a lot of skills players, but again, you open up the hood and you look in there and you're like, that's a go-kart engine. I can't go anywhere with this. It looks great. It looks great, man. It passes the look test, but I can't take it out. I can't do what I want to do with this thing.
Well, it's fun to make fun of the Bengals and the Steelers, but we still have that other team in the division and they still do know what they're doing.
They do. I think they did a great job with the draft. Yeah. They always do. They're well coached. I hate him too. I really do. I hate him too. And I'm sure that we're going to get a Browns-Ravens Monday night game this year.
Yeah.
Or their Sunday night game because for some reason that has become the marquee game for the NFL. They just rail ESPN. I'm sure that week we'll see the Rams and the Cardinals on Monday Night Football.
Always. Texans and Titans. Let's go.
Yeah.
It's so crazy. ESPN pays a gajillion dollars to the NFL. And before this year, before the new contract, they weren't even in the Super Bowl rotation. They got one playoff game, an AFC wildcard game, which was always, rated just slightly higher than the rerun of Jerry Springer. And
it's a good rerun though. It's one of the good episodes.
Yeah. So you're going to get
Steve got his ass in that episode.
Yeah, well, he did.
Yeah.
Steve's got a show now, bro.
Yeah, he's got his own show.
Show, which, by the way, rates just higher than Monday Night Football in most cases. So, there you go.
All right, Jay, listen, you've spent a great amount of time with us. This was awesome recapping the draft. We love having you on. Second time having you on. We sure will look forward to doing this again in the future. But check out Jay Crawford on WKYC Channel 3. What times are you on?
5 o'clock every afternoon, Monday through Friday, with the program What's New with my wonderful co-host, Betsy Kling. We have a blast every day. We really do.
When you get home from work, pop on Channel 3. How could you not like seeing Jay Crawford making your day better? So, Jay, thank you so much for joining us, sir, and we'll talk to you again soon.
By the way, I like to think of myself as your go-to guy for grocery store analogies.
100%.
I've never had this many in one period of time like this.
I've never made this many, but it kind of became the theme, and I just ran with it.
Like if anybody else tries to make one, I'm just going to cut them off. I'm going to be like, listen. We have
only one guy can do that. Okay.
Listen. Now I'm hungry, and my Heinen's card points have gone like through the roof. So this has been great.
Guys, always good to see you, man. Take care.
Yeah,
All right, see you, Jay.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
And that was Jay Crawford joining us from WKYC Channel 3. Again, check him out every weekday, 5 o'clock. What's it called? What's New? What's New?
What's New?
With Jay and Betsy Kling. But that was awesome. That was awesome.
What's new? What's new? Jay and Betsy.
Hey. Listen, it was fun just getting, Jay's been around involved in sports for a long time, with ESPN for a long time. He knows a lot of people. So it was fun getting his perspective because, again, as a Browns fan, I watched that draft. And Chad, you're probably the same way, just thinking, holy shit, we are crushing this. We are crushing, You take Tommy Togiai in the 4th round. And again, I don't know that Tommy Togiai is going to be good. What I do know is what I've seen. And again, when I judge, when I try to make my judgments on how players are going to be in the draft and coming out of college and all that, it's very much for me based on how they've looked in their games.
Yeah.
Right. So a lot of people a lot smarter than me do a lot more digging into other things. I just don't get into I call them the combine stats. I don't get into the combine stats.
Right.
I watch how a guy plays, and generally that translates.
Yeah.
And I think Togiai and Greg Newsome and JOK, man, like this draft, I think they've got a real chance to put 3 immediate impact players on the field right from the start.
Yeah, I mean, and what you were talking about there, Mike, is what a lot of people call the eye test. I mean, you look at them on the field, you see how they play, and and you think, usually it translates. Something I wanted to mention, Togiai, something we missed when we had Jay on was, they talked about his, size issues, but I think the other factor was that something we missed is he was only a full-time starter for 1 year. And I think if I'm convinced he would have been a 1st or 2nd round pick if he would have had more than 1 year as a full-time starter, because I love that guy too. Because, again, the eye test, you watch him in games, he is wreaking havoc on every single play that he is down in that 3-point stance. So I'm really excited to see him play.
Well, and it's also, the other thing that he does a lot well. Again, there's interior defensive linemen. Again, their primary job is to be a run stuffer. Their primary job is to be a block eater, right? Eat up blockers so that your edge players and your linebackers can get at the quarterback.
Right.
However, Tommy Togiai was a beast. He got into the backfield all season long. So this is a guy that creates problems in the backfield. Not only does he eat blockers, but he pushes them back. I think, to me, listen, we've talked about the offense, and I love adding Anthony Schwartz to that. That's going to mean that somebody else isn't going to make the team, because Schwartz will, unless he is just a travesty. However, for me, the thing I am most excited about, right? I think the defensive backfield is, assuming health happens, is going to be one of the best defensive backfields in the league. I think your edge rushers, when you talk about Tech and you talk about Miles and you talk about Jadeveon Clowney and all that, are going to be phenomenal. The thing I am most excited to watch, though, is that battle on the defensive interior line. Who's going to make it? Who's going to play between the guys they brought in free agency, between the guys, again, like Billings that didn't play last year, but he was here.
Right.
And between like a guy like Togiai, add him to the mix. I know everybody's talking about Sheldon Richardson being gone. And I will not say a bad word about Sheldon Richardson because I really like him. But like, that room's doing really well right now, even without Sheldon Richardson. Like, I know a lot of people, and Andrew Berry has said publicly, we would welcome Sheldon Richardson back if the deal is right. I think that's a pipe dream. I do not think that's going to happen, but I think the room's doing just fine.
There are so many options at so many positions right now.
What is happening?
The Browns roster, Mike, is up to 90 players. They have to cut that down to 53. It's up to 90 players. And there's only, 5-6 roster spots available? Assuming there's only like 5 or 6 assumed roster spots available. So you've got to work your ass off if you want to make this team. And this is how the other half lives. Like this is how
I think some of these younger guys that you love, just get ready because they're going to the practice squad because they don't want to lose them, but they're not going to be able to keep them. And then get ready. Some of these other guys, some of these players that fans like, see ya. They're going to go. They don't have room for them.
Right.
So, anyways,
again, another good problem good teams have. You're not going to be able to keep every good player on your team. You're just not.
No, you sure can't. So, listen, we had a great time. Jay Crawford, one of the great storytellers we have had on the podcast. That's our second time now we have had him on the podcast. And go check him out on his Twitter at JCrawfordCLE. But I think that's going to pretty much wrap us up. This is about as long as we want to go. So we're going to end it as we always do. We usually do our 3 cheers of the week. We're going to do our 2 cheers of the week because we don't have Joe this week. He'll be back next week. So our 3 cheers of the week. Chad, are we going to do the dance that we do every week where you're like, oh, shit, I got to think about something? Or are we going to, do you have one?
No. I actually have something this week. Thanks for taking behind the curtain there, Mike. It's fine. It's good.
You literally said it on the podcast last week.
No, I know. I'm just kidding. This one's a little bit of a serious one. It's a little bit more emotional. It's funny because we talked about before we went live about some of these emotional games that guys have after tragedies, like the Brett Favre game that we talked about. My cheers is going to go out to TJ Oshie of the Washington Capitals. He just lost his dad a couple days ago. Very, very recently. It might have been a couple days. I don't remember exactly what day, but this was his first game back after losing his dad, and he had a hat trick tonight. So there's just something about
that's incredible.
Incredible about those games that happen and those things that happen. We talked about Brett Favre throwing for 500 yards. It wasn't 500 yards.
250,000 yards.
Yeah, he had an amazing game after he just lost his dad. And TJ, it was no different for TJ Oshie tonight. So my cheers of the week goes to TJ Oshie for just coming out and as emotional as he was and having that game he did.
Yeah, that's a great one, Chad. And the hat trick, it's storybook, man. And that's a guy. I hate the Washington Capitals. I hate them with a passion. I hate them. So when he left the Blues to go to Washington, I was like, oh, great. Right. Because this guy's an American icon, right? Remember what he did in the Olympics when they just kept sending him for the shootout and he just kept scoring?
Yeah.
So he was an American icon. He seems like he's a good dude. And it just happens to play for the Capitals, but a guy that you can always root for, and a tough week for him. But what a way, his dad was watching over him when that was happening. So that was a cool one, Chad. Mine's not going to be emotional, but it's going to be timely and it's going to be easy. We've got to cheers the city of Cleveland for the weekend that they had. I have to tell you, I spent a lot of time down there this weekend. I had a buddy come in from Seattle. We had a great time. Spent time at the restaurants, spent time down in the flats. We spent time just taking it all. We spent time at the draft, just kind of taking it all in. The city of Cleveland did a magnificent job. The people that work down there, the planners, both for the NFL, the Browns, and the city, did a spectacular job. They had areas around the city where you could sit outside, have a beer, watch the draft. The restaurants were doing well. It just was. Again, it was some sort of semblance of normalcy, but the city looked beautiful. They did a fantastic job, and they certainly set a bar. And I think a lot of the national people that came here to cover the draft said the same thing. They set a bar. This is how the draft should go. It's what it should look like. It's what it should feel like, and it set a bar. So cheers to the city of Cleveland for an awesome weekend where you were front and center in the sports world. Loved that. So, Chad, you got anything to add before we get out of here?
Yeah, no, I don't. Oh, Carol Baskin just released her own cryptocurrency. How do you feel about
if that? Doesn't listen, I'm not going to tell you my feelings on the majority of people getting into cryptocurrency, but if that doesn't explain it, I don't know what does. Carol Baskin has a cryptocurrency. Yeah. Cool. I just made up money too. It's fine.
Yeah.
Sorry. Maybe Joey can edit in. Some
cat coin.
Or some songs from that show, some Tiger King songs.
Yeah.
All right, so that's going to do it. We got to give out our thanks. Again, first of all, thank you goes out to the Belly Up Sports Podcast Network for hosting us, for having us a part of the group. Go check them out, Belly Up Sports. Check out some of the other shows on the Belly Up Sports Podcast Network. Some of our partners over there, they do great work. Again, a big thanks goes out to Jay Crawford from WKYC, from talking everything from Browns to ESPN to the Cavs to the Indians and so much more. We had a great time with Jay, and we'll do that again. And of course, our biggest thanks always goes out to you, the listeners. We appreciate you, and the watchers, I guess. We appreciate you taking part with us. We hope you enjoyed as much as we enjoy bringing it to you. So for the absentee, Joey down there in Nashville, Tennessee at Garage Beers, Joe for Chad over there on the east side at Garage Beers, Chad. My name is Michael Keefe. This has been episode 64 of the Garage Beers podcast. We'll see you again next week. Cheers, everybody.
Yeah.